this morning I got out this old, and I'm saying old, 1987. I double checked
Oh, nice.
um, book from Thich Nhat Hanh called Being Peace because I woke up to a email from the New York Times, which really annoyed me. That like, how are you emailing me? I didn't give you. Did I give you permission to email me about the things that are the atrocities that are happening in our world right now?
Yeah.
And so this book dates back to 1987, and Thich Nhat Hanh was writing during the Cold War.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's relevant, isn't it?
Yeah, you could read from this book and it feels the same, right? And many people that may be listening to this may have not lived through the Cold War, but I'm a child of the Cold War. The Cold War is
Yeah.
like, I just remember how that felt
Yeah.
as a child. And and what he talks about in the book is sitting down with people and
Yeah.
listening.
Yeah.
That's engaged practice. And one of the things that we have to do in order to sit down with another person is we have to let go of our sense of self as being separate,
Yeah.
acknowledge our interdependence, and really practice practice non-attachment,
Yeah.
non-attachment to our belief system.
Absolutely. When you sit down with a person, your mind is, I mean, if they're different from you, especially, and they have different values than you, or just different approach to life, your mind is going to be judging. You're going to want to get away. You're going to want to, be critical. And so the hardest part is kind of being able to sit. Non-judgment is actually a pretty tricky part, because you got to do a lot of that because people who are different from you are going, your ego is going to say, no, you've got to separate. That's bad. So it really is letting go of your desire for everybody to be like you as well and to agree with you, which is a really non-egoic thing to do. There's some really nice research in our university where they look at helping teachers to support. I would describe it as support young people's values. That's the way I would describe it. They call it autonomy support, which is where instead of the teacher helps listens to the student and is learns to be on their side more. What we would call value clarification and motivational interviewing or whatever words you want to use. And when the teacher learns to do that, I think they're putting evidence-based process into play. And what happens is really interesting. They never talk about aggression or bullying. They never talk about being a victim. But what happens is when the teacher creates an environment that's more focused on values and on recognizing the individual needs of each student, and what happens is the aggression goes down and the environment becomes less egoic. So let me tell you what that means, because that's kind of interesting because we are about context, aren't we, Diana? So to create an ego, if you want to create an egoic environment where there's tons of attachment and it increases aggression and conflict, here's what you do. You basically make things incredibly competitive. You hold up one person as this is an example. This person is awesome, with the implication that why aren't you like that? And so you really reinforce hierarchy and status. And then I believe that gets attachment, ego, and you get more aggression in those classrooms when you do that. Look at look at Lisa. She's getting straight A's and she does this. Why are you guys should be like this? That's egoic. The non-egoic approach is much more about recognizing that people are on their own journey, that not holding one person up as everybody should be like that person, just reducing that kind of, you don't put people's grades on a wall and compare them to each other. You're just reducing that and kind of more emphasizing, like we were doing earlier in the podcast, that people are on their own journeys. And what you really want to be striving for is to be in 3 months, better than the person you were 3 months ago, rather than better than this person or that person. And I think a really important feature of that is to emphasize what each individual person brings to the table, which is always unique and not really comparable. That's a big push with the end of normal, like Steve Hayes' talk on end of normal. I'd encourage people to see those if they get a chance. But this whole idea of that there's a normal that everybody's supposed to be striving for is a modern idea. It wasn't present hundreds of years ago. Everybody has their unique strengths and talents and skills, and there is no average. You know what I mean? Like everybody's so different and brings such different things to the table. And so if you want to undermine attachment and ego in your environment, like if you're a teacher or a manager or even a therapist, I guess you want to minimize this idea that there is a ideal average person, like Bill Gates, be like this person or that person that you want to be like, and more make it about not competition with other people, but maybe if you want to motivate yourself, I guess competition with your earlier self. Are you improving on your earlier self? And I think that undermines attachment to some extent. Pe-
That's a tricky one. I'm gonna nitpick a little.
okay,
Do you mind?
sure, of course.
Um, Being a better version of yourself can be a little slippery of a
Yeah,
slope for
yeah,
folks,
yes,
and, kinda going back to some of Ty's teaching of your true nature is good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's nothing to be improved here. You are not a self-improvement project. You are not a work in
That's
progress.
true. Yeah,
There is nothing to be improved about who you are.
yeah,
You are whole.
absolutely.
And we can also continue to do and work on being a full expression of that goodness
Yeah.
in the world. And how are we lining up with that? Because I just know for myself that would hook me because I'm like, was I better? Am I better than myself than I was
Yeah,
yesterday?
yeah.
Was I
Okay, so yeah, so I've fallen into the trap.
all of a sudden I'm selfing
Exactly,
again?
exactly. I think you're absolutely right. Like that's really deep and beautiful what you're saying. I that's true. So I think one of the things about non-attachment is holding on to things that not holding on, that's the opposite of non, but recognizing things which seem to be totally contradictory. And how do you live in a life where there seem to be all these contradictions? Because I completely agree with you. And people want to improve, but it doesn't mean that they aren't already complete and perfect and whole.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So how do you? You're absolutely right. So what I'm saying could be very trappy as well. And so this pull to attachment is ever present, and we need somebody like you saying exactly what you said, which is to remind us. But actually, even if you aren't a better version of yourself, the act of living and doing what you're doing is enough.
For me, it's about understanding it in my body
Yeah,
because when you started talking about, like, be a better version of you,
yeah,
I could feel it in my body first.
yeah,
Like, ooh, I feel it's almost like a lean in, graspy, be a better version of me. I better hurry up to
yeah,
catch up to that version of me, you know? And so I think that what I think we can start to do is pay attention to how it feels. Like, you know what graspiness feels like.
yeah,
And when you're kind of wanting something and holding it tightly, you
yeah,
also know what it feels like in your body to let be. Like if
yeah,
you're watching your dog run through, like I walked my dog this morning and I let her off leash when we got to the lane and she just ran like
yeah,
like wild ran. And I had so much sympathetic joy for her. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is just beauty." I was not attached to it. I didn't
yeah,
need her to keep running. It was just being in the moment of it,
yeah.
right? So you know what it feels like in your body to experience non-attachment
Yeah, that's a good way to
and
attachment.
attachment. Mhm.
I mean, I've had a lot of that experience lately with things like I do martial arts, I do boxing, I play piano. I, obviously, I'm always trying to improve at lots of things, but kind of just and I know what it feels like to feel attached. Like I want to be able to play this piece well, or I want to be a better. I want to be able to execute this attack. And so I know what that feels like, and it's different from just seeking to improve in itself as a joy.
Mhm.
And self-determination theory talks about this need for competence, and the idea is that we all have a need to be effective and successful in the world. And I think that's inherently reinforcing, like not necessarily successful, but like
Mhm.
just developing skill in itself, even not being attached to the end of, am I ever going to be able to do this difficult music? Am I ever going to be able to be this kind of athlete? Or am I ever going to, like being able to enjoy the process without clinging to the outcome? I think I agree with you that talking in terms of body, I know that distinction. It's very hard to talk about verbally though. But
Mhm.
I know when I'm like, oh gosh, this I just suck. I'm never going to get better. That shows up for me. I'm like, God, how bad am I? Like I have no natural talent at this. To just kind of appreciating and enjoying that moment of trying to improve, I guess.
Mhm.
And I think you can sense it in your body for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, it's the appreciation of growth. It's like, working with a kid that's learning how to read. You just
Yeah,
see them getting better at it, and it feels good to them because once they get better at it, they can read more, and they move from, like, this like, the lame books that have, like, 3
yeah,
words per page to actually a book that's interesting,
yeah,
and how that kinda growth is, that's not about because now they can say, "I can read."
yeah,
It's about what doors it opens up for
yeah,
them as
yeah,
they grow, and it's a different frame, I guess, a different way of seeing success or seeing striving or
yeah. There's
seeing improvement.
there's an interesting distinction in positive psychology. Good, interesting line of research on harmonious passion versus what's the other passion? It's kind of like a controlled or rigid kind of passion. So harmonious passion is where what you're doing and striving for kind of fits in nicely with your life. So maybe you want to be writing a new book, which I know you do, and but you're able to do that and not necessarily, now say a loved one wants to go out with you to a meal or something, you're able to like let go of that writing to do something else and make it part of your life. Whereas the more controlled kind of passion is like, you know, the person who that has to dominate everything. They have to be good at this. It's like the dancer who continues to train like 40 hours, 50 hours a week, even when they have an injury. You know what I mean? And they don't make space for other things in their life. That I think could be a bit more egoic. Like there's a movie called Whiplash. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's person's just obsessed with being the greatest drummer of all time, and you can just see it's non-harmonious because he just destroys. He harms his relationships. He puts other people down because it's all about that one thing of being the greatest drummer of all time. And it's a little bit. I think there's some ego in there. And ego, I don't know. I don't know if ego is completely bad sometimes. I guess if it pushes you to strive, but it can. I think you need to be able to let go of it when you need to let go of it. That's the key.
I guess that's a place that I'm in that maybe I can actually, ask a good consult on
Yeah.
from you.
Okay.
Um, I can't write this book because I cannot I cannot write a book about striving without getting hooked by striving. So the behind the scenes of writing a
Yeah.
book is you have to get an agent, and in order to get an agent, you have to have not like, really, they don't care about your ideas anymore, it's like how many followers you have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how can we live in this world that is driven by individualism and
Yeah.
capitalism and striving and do it differently without I mean, in some ways, I have just put it on hold because I cannot
Yeah.
it's like like in 12 steps when they say an alcoholic that comes up against alcohol, if they meet it, they recoil as if from a hot flame.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that about myself. I need to recoil as from a hot flame because it's so dangerous for me, but I also feel like I have something to say and offer in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
It's
Gosh, that's
so
a tough
hard.
one.
So you're in academia. You just described how you face that within academia. How are you doing it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the trick with ego is that it's like thinking it's very future oriented a lot of times. Like, so I will be a great writer. I'm going to prove to them, I'm going to prove to the world, I'm going to be important. I think the key is to kind of narrow your time frame way down. Like, so actually make it about tomorrow between 10 and 11. I'm just going to, I'm going to start writing this book. I'm just going to write for an hour and just focus in on the hour, and your ego will try and pull you out and say, well, what the people are going to hate this. There's your ego. This is crap. I'm not saying I don't have anything interesting to say. All that stuff is going to show up, and you just need to kind of notice that's ego and just say, no, I made a commitment for an hour to write this, regardless of how bad it is, regardless of whether I actually get one sentence out or 5,000 words. I'm not even going to care if I have to throw it all away. So that's the non-attached approach to striving right
Mhm.
there. Like I have thrown away, Louise Hayes and I have written a lot together, and we will have thrown away entire books like worth of material. Like it's probably about 3 to 1, 4 to 1, like 4 pages to one that's kept. It's
I
it's a
love it.
terrible process, but you have to throw away a lot of stuff, and you have to be willing to, and you have to be willing to feel stupid. You have to be willing to feel like you don't know anything, and that you have to be willing to feel like, who am I to be doing this? So all that's going to show up in that 1 hour. And if an hour is too much, take it down to 10 minutes, just 10 minutes of total. This is like your non-attachment practice. We'll make it your non-attachment practice, writing a book on striving. So
Oh,
you
jeez.
start writing your book on striving, you're practicing it, because like your mind is going to be attached to all kinds of things. Plus, what if you write something and you put it out in the world and everybody hates it and says it's crap? There you go again, another chance to practice non-attachment to ego. And people will say that even if it's great, people will tell you it's crap. Another chance to practice non-attachment to ego. So the more you strive, the more some people will be against you. Another chance to practice non-attachment to ego. You're going to feel like, no, they're against me because I'm really a bad writer or I'm not good enough. You need to let that go. Good enough, bad enough, all that. So yeah, if you enter this arena called writing the book that you want to write, you are going to be practicing non-attachment
Mhm.
all the time. So just don't treat it as writing a book. Say, hey, this is my non-attachment practice.
It's my non-attachment practice, and I like the hour part because it's how much of my life is it taking up? As my
Yeah,
dad said, like, be the embodiment of what you teach.
yeah,
And if it's taking up and squeezing out other things that are of deep value to me, like working in my garden or being with my kids,
yeah,
then maybe it's not. Maybe it's a book that needs to take 11 years to write until my nine-year-old
yeah,
is out of the house,
yeah,
and it's because it's an hour a day. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, even that. See, even now, your mind jumps to 11 years. You know what I mean? Like, see what I mean? Like, it's just irresistible for us. And I'm like this too.
yeah.
I'm always being attached. So this is not something you ever cure or fix, by the way. I'm always feeling like, God, why am I doing this? I'm a 54-year-old guy trying to do a cartwheel into axe kick kind of martial arts, and the young kids are just doing it without even thinking about it. So if you really want to feel non-attached, do something that younger people are much better at and do it next to them.
Mhm.
That's kind of an experience. But it all is about just showing up again. Maybe you have a half hour today, show up to it. And then tomorrow you're going to be like, oh, I don't have any time. I'm going to put my child first. And that's harmonious passion. It's like, okay, that's what I'm going to do today. And just keep showing up. And those little steps will get you there. I don't know if it's 11 years or 3, who knows? Don't know.
Mhm.
But if you can let go of that attachment to knowing the future, knowing how fast it will be, how slow it will be, let go of the attachment that it should be done in 3 years, or other people seem to do it in 2 years, or this person had a child and they wrote a best-selling book. That's that egoic comparison of you should be like that other person. When your life is completely unique and your passions and loves are completely unique, they're yours, and you're the only one who can find your way. There's a way for you that isn't the same for anybody else.
Well, thank you. I think that that's a good place to end with those words. And I appreciate the personal consult there, but also I
Oh,
think that we could apply it to people are wanting to write books, but they're wanting to do other things. They're considering going
yeah,
back to graduate school. They're considering making a job change. They're considering
yeah,
starting a family. All these different things that take time or we think that we're not ready for, or we're not good enough
mm,
for, or whatever.
yeah,
Practicing non-attachment in that way with those different dimensions of our life can really free us up.
yeah. Just the
So,
very act of writing the book sometimes will be you practicing non-attachment. So it's non-attachment practiced in the act of embodying your values. I think that's where it happens. I think that was a
yeah.
brilliant point you made. I really do like to see people who embody what they talk about.
Well, thank you. I think you're doing that, Joseph, and appreciate the efforts that you are making in your life. You have had such a huge impact on many people's lives because it's you that impacts the research, that impacts the clinicians that are carrying out that research, that
Yeah.
is spread to many, many lives. Many people may not even know that you have influenced
Oh,
them, but
that's
you
okay.
have. So, and
I
I
hope
look
so.
forward to having you back because when you come back, we are gonna really focus in on your new book that's coming out in September,
Yeah.
but it feels a little bit early in this time of year to be talking about something coming out in September,
Yeah.
even though it's probably alive for you right now. But we'll be talking about that
Yeah. That's
as well.
awesome. Yep.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.